And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to the pre-show. Today is our 220-1001 A-plus study group. So we have plenty of A-plus questions. I need to get my my screens set up. Let's see if I can pop out the chat so I can see people. There we go. We'll make the chat a little bigger on my screen. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. This should work pretty well. We've got plenty of A-plus Q&A to do today. I have put together all new questions, so I'm glad to have you here for that. Thank you for joining us. If you are watching this on the replay, you can fast forward about 10 minutes. We'll get started. If you're watching this live, you could still fast forward 10 minutes and then tell me how you did that. I would love to know. I have got, you know what I need to do is have my Skype ready to go. We're going to need that later. Hello, Chicago. Hello, Egypt. Welcome. There's a long distance check-in. Welcome. Thanks for being here. I've got, okay, Skype is there. Do I have the call-in stuff? I do here. So that's good. Very nice. We've got recordings going here. There's my Cylons. Texas is here. Somalia is checking in. Welcome. Fort Walton Beach is here. Thanks for being here. L.A., Lawrenceville, Georgia, welcome. London. Now, which London is it? It's the question. South Africa is here. Cary, North Carolina. Up there in the North Carolina. Is it getting cold in North Carolina yet? It's not getting cold here. Right now, it's 83. High today, 91 Fahrenheit. So that's the way it goes. Port Clinton, Ohio is here. Missouri's checking in. Dallas again. Nashville is here. I was just watching some Nashville stuff on the YouTube yesterday. Baltimore's here. Lots of Texas, lots of Ohio. Welcome. Orlando. That's where I was last week. Had a good time in Orlando. A few days in Orlando. We were there and we were gone. SoCal, welcome. Houston, Texas. Louisville. Honolulu. So we are getting your early morning now. So I got the early mornings in Honolulu. We have the later nights over in Africa. So that's here. I will tell you in a moment how you can answer the questions. Details are also available at professormesser.com/live. But we haven't gotten started yet. I'll tell you how we do all of that in just a moment. Get all of that done. Portland, Oregon is here. There's Atlanta. Welcome. Another Orlando. Thanks for being here. So this is not the study group. Looking at the back of my head is not the actual study group. If only it were that easy. Nope. We'll turn the camera around. We'll make sure you're able to see everything in just a moment. And then we'll, right now, I can see what I'm going to do, but you can't see what I'm going to do. So in about 6 minutes, we will get the study group going. And you'll be able to follow along. I'll show you exactly how you can answer questions online. If you are watching this on the replay, there's nothing you can do than watch. There's no voting or answering the questions, unfortunately, if you're not live. That's how it goes, I'm afraid. Ghana is checking in. San Antonio, Texas, Portland, Oregon, New Mexico, all over the United States and the world. Panama, welcome. Fayetteville, Dublin. Again, which Dublin is it? Is it Dublin, Ohio? Is it? I have a feeling it's probably not Dublin, Ohio. Because when you kind of put in Dublin, Ohio, I can tell by the names. Like, that doesn't sound like someone who's from Dublin, Ohio. That's a name that looks Irish that Americans can't pronounce. That's pretty much, so I'm not going to do that. Yes, Dublin, Ireland, it's locked in. So I see how it's how the name is. It's SOAMES, which is probably Sam or something like that. I'm not good at all with the Irish names. I'm awful with them. I need to spend more time because it doesn't seem like it would be that difficult to figure out. There's just a series of rules. I've seen that video on the YouTube. Iceland, welcome. I was just looking at some Iceland stuff yesterday as well. What was I doing looking at Iceland? Probably just trying to figure out where the where the next trip is going to be. I think I know where the next trip is going to be. Iceland's on the list. It's on the top part of the list. So I do have to figure out how to get Mrs. Professor Messer there. We'll figure it out in a bit. Joe passed Security Plus last week. Congratulations, Joe. Everybody in the chat room, give Joe congratulations for that. Well done, sir. Nice job. India's here. Isle of Man is here checking in. Thank you. There is all A+ today, though. Plenty of A+. There's Idaho. Way to go. Does that get old, Tyler? It probably does. I'm sorry. That is all good. I like hearing when people get their certifications. This is for the latest series of A+. Yes, the 220-1001. We started in February with the study groups doing the 220-1001. So if you want to go back to February, that is for the all-new series of A+. It was introduced in January. So in February, we started doing the new study groups. So we came right out of the gate with the new content. And I mean, a lot of it is the same. For those of you wondering if it's the same or not, you'll see a lot of similarities. About 20% of the exam objectives are new. I think I got rid of a number of them. The live stream, the first hour of the live stream will be Q&A, where I ask you questions and you answer. And then we do what I call the after show, which is I open up phone lines, I take questions from the chat room, we turn it around so you ask me questions. We see what happens. You don't ask me questions about, you don't ask me exam questions, you ask me other kinds of questions. Like, what's your favorite color? What did you do last week? How's Mrs. Professor? Nobody ever asks that. You're welcome to, though. You can ask anything you'd like. Mainly people ask questions about, I'm thinking of doing this in my career. What should I do? And seeing how I'm someone who has had an IT career that has ranged from the grunt work at the bottom all the way up to high-end systems engineering. I think I've got a little bit of advice that you could take with at least a grain of salt. You can then decide whether I know what I'm talking about or not. That's up to you. So that's the way it goes, I guess. I can tell you, but is it really going to be worth it? We'll find out in a moment. That's the problem when I started giving away free videos, free content. People were thinking, is that really going to be good? Sometimes I have to explain the idea behind it, that I could have you pay for it. It just didn't seem to work out that way. It seemed to be a better way just to put it out there and see if we can make a game of it. See if we can make a company of it. And we have. You guys have been great. So far, so good. We'll figure it out. So it's all 220-1001 today. It is all the latest questions, the latest content. So we will absolutely talk about that too. Virginia is here. We got a minute and a half before we get started. Roanoke, Virginia is here. Did Microsoft change up their certs? Microsoft constantly changes up their certs. Constantly. And it seems now they're adding more numbers to them. You have the certification number, then you have the class number you would take. It's very complicated. It's complicated for me to keep up with. You really have to spend as much time studying how the certification process is at Microsoft as you do on the actual certification. It seems that it's not like that totally, but it just seems like that. It's the frustration of it. What type of grunt work? Well, everybody in IT kind of starts at the bottom. And I started with a computer company in South Miami, delivering cables, upgrading memory, installing hard drive upgrades. They didn't have a hard drive. I put one in. That kind of gives you an idea of the time frame we're talking about here. So I would drive all around South Florida, and sometimes it was just delivery. Sometimes it was doing something a little bit technical, but sometimes not. That's just how those new jobs start. And then eventually I moved up to help desk. So I didn't even start at the help desk. I was below the help desk. So that's what you have to do, though, to get in there. It was an amazing experience, though. I would not have changed it for the world. It's fantastic. Let's get this started now. Let's do some study groups. You could see the number just changed to noon. I guess it would be good if I put up the actual presentation so we would be able to see it. Look what's new in Keynote. I don't need to know right this very second. That's what I want right there. And I think it's time to get going, everybody. let's start the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2019 Professor Messer 220-1001 A+ study group, coming to you live from our studios here. The Messer Studios is all set up. If you were joining us for the pre-show, we have people here in the chat room live from all over the world. We would love to have you come and join us. You can always find out what's going on our website at professormesser.com/calendar. This first hour of the study group will be questions that I ask of you. And then the second hour, we call it the after show, where you ask questions of me. So it'll be a little bit of that back and forth. And I'll take questions from the chat room. I'll open up the phone lines. But in this first hour, I'm going to be asking you brand new questions I've written specifically for this study group, and the way that you would join us with those questions and answers if you're watching this live is to pop open a new browser window and go to professormesser.com/QA. As I've been told, it stands for question answer. That's how I remember it. There's also an app you can get for your mobile device that is the Socrative Student app. That Socrative Student app is one that you can get on your favorite app store. When you go into the app, it will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word. Make sure you spell it right. PROFESSORMESSER. So a little bit with the O's and the E's. Make sure you get those right. And if you get those right, there will be a question waiting for you in this chat room. The question is one from last month. We call this our study group rewind question. And by the way, if you're still trying to figure out how do I get to that, you can always find the instructions on how to answer the questions at professormesser.com/live. There is a question waiting for you. This is the one from last month that asks, the BIOS of an Intel computer has enabled the VT option. Which of these would be most associated with this configuration? So you have a number of options available to you. Those options are, once you go to that professormesser.com/QA, is it an extended physical memory address? Is it a standard instruction set for application developers? Is it additional protection against malicious software? Is it support for large boot drive sizes? Or is it OS virtualization? So if you go to professormesser.com/QA, you can lock in your answer. And as we do this in the study group, make sure as you're locking in that answer that you do not put the answer in the chat room. That's not how we do it. You don't put the answer, don't even put a hint to the answer in a chat room. We're going to see how well we do with these questions and answers. Now, as you're answering that question, as we get started, we'll come back to the answer in just a moment. I want to thank you for joining us. We've got plenty of Q&A today to go through today. We'll be opening up the phone lines at the end, as I mentioned. We've got also videos that we're putting on YouTube all the time. If you would like to help support what we're doing here, you can subscribe to our channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. Costs you nothing, and it helps me a lot. There's also a Twitter question of the day. You can find that at professormesser.com/Twitter, and a pop quiz question every day for A+, Monday through Friday. So you're welcome to join us there and be able to watch what's going on. I'm also want to be sure you're aware, since we're getting into the later part of the year, the holidays are coming up. We have, of course, another way that you can help support us here is to go to professormesser.com/Amazon. Amazon will give us a little bit of a commission every time you buy something, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. So it's a great way to help support what we're doing here on the site. To get to that, you would go to professormesser.com/Amazon. As you watch this study group today, I will give you a continuing education unit credit just by watching. Sometime in this first hour, I'm going to give you instructions on how to do that. So if you're someone who is accumulating these CEUs for any particular reason, I've had people send me requests just this week for certifications that aren't even CompTIA certifications. They're just watching these. So we get those too. The continuing education unit credits, I'll explain sometime in this first hour. So it's always a mystery when that's going to be. So I will tell you all about it. Today we're going to talk about questions that come directly from the 220-1001 A+ exam. These are the latest series of A+ exams. They were released this year in January 15th, 2019. The exams are very similar to the older exams. The 221,001, you need a 675 score on a range between 100 and 900. On the 221,002, you need a 700. You have to do a little bit better on the 221,002. I realize a number of you have studied the older version of this exam, the 900 series, and it's good to know that there's not a lot that has changed, but there's enough that's changed that it will have an effect on your final score. So make sure that you have the latest exam materials that specifically say the 221,001 or the 221,002. That's because there have been about 21% new topics on the 1001 and 23% on the 1002. A lot of you wanted to know, where are those new topics? What are the old topics and what are the new ones? And I have documented this for you finally. After everybody has berated me for months, I really actually did it. You can go to ProfessorMesser.com/objectives, and I've highlighted every single objective that is brand new on the 221,001 or 221,002. So if you're transitioning over, that might help you a little bit. You might also hear this 221,001 called the Core 1. So today we're going to talk about questions on mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization, cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. So that might help you. In 2 days from now, we have another study group planned on Thursday where we'll do the same thing for the 221,002. Also want to let you know that these courses are, of course, available for you to watch for free online every minute of every video. But some people like to have an offline version of this, either just the audio versions of these or the video versions of these. If you'd like to see more about that, you can find it at ProfessorMesser.com/download A+, and you'll be able to take these off the internet and take them with you wherever you happen to go. We'll also have an audio version of this available as the study group available as a podcast. So if you like these study groups, but you'd like to have something to listen to when you're in the car, you're working out, and have it automatically downloaded on your podcast app, you can subscribe at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. We're almost done, I promise, with telling you all the announcements today. Some of you have realized also about a day later, you will see that there are timestamps available in the YouTube descriptions. So if some of you want to come back to this later and jump right to the question and right to the answer, you can do that very quickly by looking at the YouTube video descriptions. My marketing manager, Lori, goes through all of this. She has to listen to everything I say. Hi, Lori. Sorry about that, but that's how it goes, I guess. You have to go through the entire thing, and she puts the timestamps in, which is great. So if you're looking for a particular caller, you're looking for a particular question, it's an easy way to do it. And you can go back over the last year of those and listen in and find exactly those timestamps. Let's go back to this question we looked at earlier, which was the BIOS of an Intel computer is enabled the VT option. Which of these would be most associated with this configuration? And if we see how we did, I didn't really fool anyone with this one, or perhaps we all remember this one from last month. The answer, of course, is OS virtualization. 88% of you chose OS virtualization. That's exactly what the VT option is for this. VT is an Intel technology called virtualization technology. So if you knew the abbreviation, you could probably figure out the answer in the question. AMD has a similar technology called AMD-V. So perhaps the same thing really under the surface. Obviously, the technologies work a little bit differently because those processors work a little bit differently, but they do provide the same thing, which is virtualization control at the hardware level of the CPU. It becomes pretty useful when you're trying to manage multiple operating systems with their memory, with the disk space, with the networking. It's nice to have that functionality in the hardware. So those of you that did answer E, OS virtualization, you got that one absolutely right. Now, another thing that you'll find on your exams, and this is an important one, is that the first set of questions you get on your exam will not be multiple choice. They will be performance-based questions. That's what CompTIA calls this, is performance-based questions. These are questions that are anything but multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. They might put you at a command prompt. They might be a matching. They might have you put things in a particular order. You might be asked to drag and drop things into a particular area. You might have to configure a system. All of these things can happen in these performance-based questions. So one of the first things I do in the study group is I give you a performance-based question. So hopefully everybody's ready. Remember, no answering in the chat room. We're going to answer by going to professormesser.com/QA. And so our first performance-based question, I'm going to clear that QA section for you so you can now put this in. And notice that I have a list of technologies and a list of descriptions. The technologies are numbered. The descriptions are lettered to make this very easy for you to put these in. So we have 5 technologies and we have more than 5 descriptions. So the question is asking, match the technology to the description. Some descriptions will not be used. So this is one where you have more answers here than you have questions. So some of these descriptions that you have will simply not be matched with anything. It's a one-to-one match. For those of you listening on the podcast, let's go through each one of these technologies. We have EOP, DSL, WAP, PoE, and NIC, NIC. Those are your 5 technologies. Now let me read off for you all of the different descriptions. Description A, power devices using an Ethernet connection. Technology B, or description B, is network communication over the electrical system. Description C is connect multiple VLANs over a single link. D is 802.11 wireless network communication. E is control the ingress or egress of network traffic. Description F is connect to an Ethernet network. Description G is forwards traffic based on IP address. And the last description is internet connectivity over twisted pair telephone cable. Well, there's a lot of descriptions there and only 5 technologies to match to it. So what you want to do is go to professormesser.com/QA and you want to put into that match. Now, if you think they're already matched up, you could put 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and 5E, and you're done. That, by the way, is not how it's matched up. That would be a little too easy. I keep saying that one of these days I'm going to make it 1A, 2B, 3C. We're not. If I do that, it will be a horrible mistake. And I'll play it off like I meant to do it when that happens, by the way. So be looking for that. No, I meant to do it that way. Nobody will believe that at all. So hopefully you're familiar with these technologies: EOP, DSL, WAP, PoE, and NIC. That is yes, that's exactly what you should type in. So make sure you put those in as you're putting those through. And that's why I put them with letters and numbers so you can make it very easy. You don't have to type in the whole thing. And I'm watching the answers come in, by the way, on my side. Since this is a fill in the blank, I'm not showing you these answers as they're coming in, but you're starting to put these in. Some of you were really in there quick. Some of you knew your technologies. And by the way, all of these technologies and all of these descriptions are in the 221,001 exam objectives. So you should at least recognize all of these. If you do not recognize any or some of these, you should make a note of that. Go back and see if you can remember what these happen to be. EOP is a real thing. DSL is a real thing. WAP is a real thing. PoE is a real thing, and NIC is a real thing. So that's what you need to work on, is figuring out what those things are and knowing how they go to the description. Notice that this question, by the way, isn't simply asking you what do the letters stand for. And you're not going to get a question on the exam that's that trivial. That's simply saying, what does EOP stand for? You'll never get that. Instead, it'll be more like this one that really is asking you, what does that do for you? What advantage does that bring to the table? What capability does that provide? And hopefully you'll be able to step through these. Now that we've really looked at these a bit, let's go through and see if we can figure out what these happen to be. Let's start with the first one on our list, EOP. EOP. Now, some of you thought EOP, I think, was something different than what it actually is. EOP is matched with B, network communication over the electrical system. This is Ethernet over power, not power over Ethernet, which are actually 2 completely different technologies that work in very different ways. You don't really see a lot of EOP these days, and there are some significant disadvantages to using EOP, some challenges in engineering it, but it does work in the right scenario. And EOP, that Ethernet over power, is network communication over the electrical system. Second technology on our list was DSL. That should certainly sound familiar to most of us. That digital subscriber link or digital subscriber line. That matched up with H, internet connectivity over twisted pair telephone cable. That's exactly how DSL works. It uses the phone lines that were already in our home to give us that high-speed internet connection. We have another on our list. Number 3 is WAP. Doesn't sound like a real thing. WAP? W-A-P? Really? Yes, really. The WAP is 802.11 wireless network communication. That wireless access point is what WAP stands for. And that would be one that most of us have in our home. We all have WAPs. Now, our WAP is usually combined with a switch and a router and a firewall and a bunch of other capabilities as well. But that is the technical term around that wireless connection. The 4th on our list was PoE. If EOP was network communication over the electrical system, then PoE should be powering devices using an Ethernet connection. So make sure you know the differences between those. PoE, of course, very useful. I have a number of surveillance cameras at home and in the office. Those cameras don't plug into a power outlet. I power them using the Ethernet cable itself because I have a switch that is a PoE switch that provides that power through the Ethernet cable. Very convenient. And the 5th on our list was NIC. Nicky, Nick, Nicholas, Nick. Nope, Nick is not person's name. That's a network interface card, and that allows you to connect to an Ethernet network. So that is the 5 different descriptions. EOP was network communication over the electrical system. DSL was internet connectivity over twisted pair telephone cable. WAP was 802.11 wireless network communication. PoE was powering devices using an Ethernet connection, and NIC is connect to an Ethernet network. Now, bonus time. Let's see if we can choose and decide what the missing technologies were with the other 3 descriptions. So let's look at these 3 descriptions that were left. One is connect multiple VLANs over a single link. Now, I think we can answer in the chat room if you would like to on this one. What technology would allow you to connect multiple VLANs over a single link? And there's a very specific technology that will allow this. A lot of people saying trunk. Trunk is sort of it. I can take half credit for that. It's not virtualization. It's not a managed switch. The actual technology I'm looking for that provides that trunking capability, 802.1q. So .1q, as we call it in the industry, is what that is. That will be more useful to you when you get into Network Plus. I don't think that's an A+ technology that you have to know. So I kind of threw you a curveball on that one. That's okay. Now you've got something new put in your back pocket. The next technology or description on our list was control the ingress or egress of network traffic. So what is it? The network traffic, we want to be able to control ingress or egress. That really is one, and folks are right on. This one is an A+ question. You're spot on in the chat room with the answer firewall. That is the correct answer, to have a firewall on the network. We use this term, especially in IT security. Ingress is the traffic that is inbound. Egress is the traffic that is outbound. And this becomes really useful when you're talking about a firewall or even talking about a single interface on a device, because when you talk about data going in and data going out, it's relative to where you happen to be standing. But if we're talking about a firewall and we're talking about ingress traffic, then you know you're talking about traffic that is inbound to the firewall. And if you're talking about egress traffic, you're talking about traffic that would be leaving the firewall. And the last one, forwards traffic based on an IP address. What type of device forwards traffic based on an IP address? And a firewall can do this, but that wasn't the answer I was talking about or looking for. There's a very specific term for this. And some of you in the chat room are spot on with this one. You would have got it right if it was fill in the blank. It's router. A router is able to forward traffic based on the destination IP address that is inside the Ethernet frame. So well done with this. You were able to go through all of these to figure out not only the ones that matched up, but you guys did really well with determining 3 fill in the blank questions at the end with these answers, the 802.1q, the firewall, and the router. Well done. Although, as I mentioned, 802.1q, you'll get to that with Network Plus. You won't see that on the A+, but the others you will. Firewall and router are certainly on the A+ exam. So if any of these technologies other than .1Q are things you do not recognize, make a point of writing those down. They are in the exam objectives. You absolutely need to know them. Make sure you're familiar with them. And a lot of you did well done. I scrolled through the answers that were on the screen, kind of giving me an idea of what was there. You guys were spot on with a lot of these. So well done. I think a lot of you were doing that very, very well. Let's do some, now that we passed the performance-based questions, let's do some multiple choice questions. Some folks in the chat room, oh, I wrote them all down. We wrote every single one of those down. Well, this will help you then. Now you'll get these right on the exam. That's what this is about. Let's do a multiple choice question. Once you get through the handful of performance-based questions on your exam, the rest of the exam will be multiple choice. So hopefully that will help you. I have for you the next question, which is a multiple choice question, which asks, a company uses an email system that's located in the cloud. Users log in with their credentials to access their mail in a browser. What type of cloud model is this? Is this IaaS? Is it hybrid? Is it private? Is it SaaS? Or is it PaaS? Those are your 5 options. If you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. We've now gone to radio silent in the chat room with the answers. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA to answer this question. So a company uses an email system that's located in the cloud. Users log in with their credentials to access their mail in a browser. What type of cloud model is this? Is it IaaS? Is it hybrid? Is it private? Is it SaaS? Or is it PaaS? You think you know the answer? You know where to go. professormesser.com/QA, right there at the bottom. And lock in your answer. Let's see how you do to figure out these details. This is one where understanding how these cloud technologies work is going to be useful. If you were studying for the 900 series exams, these cloud technologies weren't in them, but they were in Network Plus and they were in Security Plus. So CompTIA added the cloud technologies to the 220-1001. All of Section 4, that Domain 4.0, is all about cloud technologies. So you have to understand at least the introductory deals. Introductory technologies dealing with the cloud becomes really useful. And as you go through your career, we're going to be doing so much with cloud-based technologies, whether it's in another location or your own location. Cloud technologies are not going to go away. They are simply getting more and more popular for many reasons. And another good one to do that. Fortunately, this section does not have the same percentage of questions as the rest of the exam, but it's plenty enough that if you start looking at these questions and trying to figure out, you realize there's a lot here that you have to be able to figure out, work through. So make sure you are familiar with these. They could give you some really easy answers on the exam. So make sure you study about what all these different technologies might be. Let's see how you did with these answers. A company uses an email system located in the cloud. Users log in with their credentials to access their mail in a browser. And what type of cloud model is this? Well, I do this all the time. Many of us do this all the time. We use Google Mail. We use Yahoo Mail. We use Microsoft Mail. We use Office 360. And those technologies would be one listed here. If we look at the one that has the highest number, is 57% of you say it's SaaS, SaaS, software as a service. We have 13% of you said it's private. 11% of you said it's platform as a service. 10% of you said IaaS, infrastructure as a service. And then 7% said hybrid. So if we go with the majority, almost 60% of you said, I think that's software as a service. And if you think about it, that's exactly what it is. The name is automatically there what this happens to be. There's software that exists somewhere other than on your system. It's software. It's not even in your data center. This software is off out into the cloud somewhere. And if you need to use this software, you simply access it, usually over a browser. There could be applications that you might run on your local desktop as well, and you're able to use the software. You don't have to manage the system. You don't have to deal with operating system patches. You don't have to deal with application upgrades. You don't have to deal with database maintenance. You don't have to do anything but log in, use the application, and log out. Really very seamless. In fact, that's why many organizations have moved to this type of model for their email, because it's a very simple and easy way to have this mail running. You don't have mail administrators at your office anymore. You don't have to pay anybody to do any of this. You don't have to figure out the nuances of managing a mail system, which can be very complex. And so by having a third party handle it that knows how to handle email, they do it all the time, and it's something that you can just have users log in and use. Perfect opportunity for software as a service. SaaS. That is the right answer. If you chose D, software as a service, that's correct. Infrastructure as a service is where the cloud provider provides you with hardware. Sometimes you'll see this called hardware as a service. Infrastructure as a service. Here's your computer. Load your own operating system. Load your own applications. You're the one that has to manage it. You're the one that has to do the operating system upgrades. You have to do everything. And infrastructure as a service allows you to do that. There's also platform as a service, which is kind of a middle ground, if you will. It's where they give you a working model. They give you kind of the Lego system for this application. They know everybody wants a different kind of customized application, so you can use different modules of this cloud-based service and plug these modules together. Maybe you need an inventory system. Maybe you also need a billing system. Maybe you need a system to provide estimates. Maybe you need one for accounts payable. You can put all those building blocks together and build your own type of system. Salesforce.com is a very good example. Yeah, maybe we should call that Lego as a service. I think that makes sense. And then we have the two others, hybrid and private. A private cloud is one where you've bought all of this cloud-based technology and it sits in your data center. A hybrid cloud is an infrastructure where some of it's private and some of it's public. So it's a little mix between the two, and there's why we call it hybrid. Your answer here is the one that SaaSD, 61% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's keep going with this. I think we've got another multiple choice question for you. By the way, those of you wanting the answer or more information about the answer, this comes from my 221,001 video, section 4.1. The video name is Cloud Models. So there you go. That's exactly where you go from there. Let's go to our next question, though, which asks, which of the following would be the best way to create a Windows boot log during the startup process? Which of the following would be the best way to create a Windows boot log during the startup process? And I have some options for you, and those options are: hold the Shift key when starting the system, start Windows in safe mode, enable in system configuration, boot from removable media, or configure boot logs in the BIOS. Those are your 5 different options. Do you think you know what the answer is? Go to professormesser.com/QA. Those answers again. So we've got the question that asks, which of the following would be the best way to create a Windows boot log during the startup process? Would it be hold the Shift key when starting the system, start Windows in safe mode, enable in system configuration, boot from removable media, or configure boot logs in the BIOS? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. That'll be the perfect way to do this. See if you know the answer. Lock that answer in. Remember, no answers in the chat room. You'll do a fine job by going to professormesser.com/QA. Be a great way to do this. Some of you may have done this before. This is a very useful thing to do, by the way. You're trying to troubleshoot a problem when your system is booting up and you need some type of log file to be able to see what's going on. The log file is not created every time you boot Windows. And you have to ask for it to create a boot log for you. So it becomes very useful to be able to know what that answer happens to be. So feel free to go through this. You'll be able to figure it out. I think some of you may have done this before. And of course, the second I do that, Tyler in the chat room goes, I've never done this before. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, then you'll learn how to do this. Yeah, you try it right after we're done. You'll be able to figure out, does that really work? Is that useful? What's in the boot log? What does it look like? What information does it put there? If you've never done it before, there's a lab for you to do. People want to know how to get more hands-on. There's a perfect hands-on lab. Create the process of a boot log during the startup and then go look at it and see what's there. you'll be able to figure out all those things. At ProfessorMesser.com/QA, lock in those answers. For those of you wanting those answers, you'll be able to figure out what those are, know what those happen to be. Let's see how we did with this one. Which of the following would be the best way to create a boot log during the startup process? And we're a little torn on this one. 43% of you, so if we go with the plurality of you, say configure boot logs in the BIOS. 36% of you, it's almost a tie, only back there by 8 points, enable in system configuration. And then it's almost a three-way tie for the third, which was hold the shift key when starting the system, start Windows in safe mode, and boot from removable media. So if we had to choose what everybody's saying, it would be E, configure boot logs in the BIOS. These log entries are incredibly useful. And as I mentioned, as you're booting and trying to get this system up and running, the boot logs are incredibly valuable when you're doing troubleshooting. And a lot of what we talk about in the A+ exam is troubleshooting and knowing how to do this. There are some ways that you can configure this in the BCD settings, but the easiest way, and the way that I use, because it is the easiest way, is I open System Configuration, I go to the Boot tab, and right in the Boot tab is an option that says, quite literally, boot log. So if you check that and you restart your system, it will create a boot log during the startup process. That's exactly how I do it. It works great. Now, the other question, of course, is where's the boot log? Where is that? Where does that come from? Where does that go? And this boot log is going to be in ntbt log. Some of you in the chat room say, wait, this is an operating system thing. Isn't that the 221,002? It would be, except in section 5.2 in the 221,001, there is an option in there about looking at logs and how you would look at log information. This comes specifically from my video, Troubleshooting Common Hardware Problems. So this is one of those questions that is about troubleshooting the system, and they expect you to know where these logs happen to be. The default for this log is in the Windows, wherever you happen to install Windows. I put Windows on here, but it would be your Windows root. And the name of that log is ntbtlog.txt. It's your Windows NT, back to the NT days. That's how far back this goes. The NT boot log is what that stands for. Even though we're not running Windows NT anymore, I guess some things in that operating system are still there from the NT days. That's one of them. Becomes very handy to have that there. So those of you that answered E, configure boot logs in the BIOS, nope, that is not going to help you. The BIOS is independent of the operating system. The BIOS gets your system running and hands it over to the operating system. The operating system could be Windows, it could be Linux, it could be anything running as the operating system. So you don't configure Windows boot logs in the BIOS that knows nothing of the operating system you happen to be running. The way that you would do this is, as we just saw in that last slide, you would enable it in the system configuration utility. C is the correct answer. 38% of you got this one absolutely right. Holding the shift key when starting the system, anybody happen to know what that does? If you want to stop all of these things from automatically starting on your system, you can hold down the shift key, and it'll stop your system from starting all those auto start programs. Starting Windows in safe mode will not automatically create a boot log, but it does a number of things that can help you troubleshoot. But this question was about creating a Windows boot log. And booting from removable media is no different than booting from non-removable media. It doesn't magically create a log during the boot process just because it's booting from removable media. There might be boot logs that are available in your BIOS, some that might give you more detail about the BIOS starting, but that wasn't the question. The question was, which of these would be the best way to create a Windows boot log during the startup process? That is an important distinction, and that is the one that will help you determine which one of these answers is going to be correct. So hopefully, as you're going through this, there are other boot logs, of course. In Linux, of course, there's logs in /var/log. And in Mac OS, you'll find logs in the utilities section under the console.app. So these logs will be incredibly important. And on your A+, you need to know about Windows. You need to know about Linux. You need to know about Mac OS. Hopefully that will help you as you're going through these and figuring out what you can find with these boot logs. Pretty useful to have that there. Hopefully you're now familiar with these boot logs and able to now work through them. And if you have never looked at a Windows boot log, start up your system configuration, click that boot log. After we're done, you can restart your system. You can look at your boot log then and find those details that are there. There's so much in the A+ certification study, in all of the exam objectives, everything you would study out of your book, everything you would study out of the videos. It is extensive. There's so much information that when I put together my courses, there are 137 videos for both the 220-1001 and the 220-1002. That's over 18 hours of content, a huge amount of content. And some of you have said, I want to be able to take notes and get everything that's in here, but I simply don't have the time to do that. You've also realized that as you're going through this, there is a very broad set of things you need to know about. Hardware, networking, laptops, printers, operating system, command line tools, mobile devices, troubleshooting, where you would find log files. They're everywhere. They're extensive. So if you're taking your own notes, you may find your notes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And of course, I have all kinds of information in my videos. It's really chock full of content. You may be writing for quite some time. And the other thing you may find is that once you're ready to take your exam, it'd be nice if you had a summary of everything that can help tell you where the boot logs are, that can show you the different sections of the booting process, that can give you an idea of where all these different utilities happen to be, where the command lines are, where all those hardware pieces and what they look like. So what I've created is a set of course notes for you that can do that. I have a set of course notes for the 220-1001 and the 220-1002. I've got them on my screen right here. Here's the ones for the 1001. These are big. This index is pretty large. It's over 57, I think 58 pages long once you go through all of this. And I take every single video and document all the details, including pictures of ports and interfaces, everything that I have on the screen, all of the text, everything is there in all of this. It's a single PDF file that I put everything in those videos into this one place. There's also a physical version of this. This is one I've created. There we go. Here's the physical version of the course notes. It's the same information. It's just in a book form. So there's the same interfaces. There's the same screen we saw before. It's just so you have an idea what that looks like. There, it's a little clearer there. So you can see a lot of information that's printed out too. So I offer this in a digital form and a physical form. If you buy the physical form, you get the digital form for free. It's another thing I throw in. That way you can, while you're waiting on this to get delivered, you'll at least have the digital form that you can go through. This is what I like to focus on when I try to tell people you need a good book, you need good videos, you need a lot of hands-on, but it's nice to have everything consolidated in one place. And if you would like to have a look at what this is about, you can find out more information at professormesser.com/1000notes. That'll be the place you go to find out all the details about the notes that I provide on my website. I have notes for A+, for Network+, for Security+, for Cisco's ICND1, and hopefully there'll be some more coming soon. I've already got plans. All kinds of things going on. Again, you can find out about those at professormesser.com/1000notes. Let's keep going with this. I have more questions for you, more multiple choice questions. Let's get these going. And the next multiple choice question asks, a system administrator is configuring a firewall to allow file sharing from Microsoft Windows computers. Which of these should the administrator use to allow this traffic? A system administrator is configuring a firewall to allow file sharing from Microsoft Windows computers. Which of these should the administrator use to allow this traffic? And they have a list of 5 different port numbers. Here they go. Is it TCP 445, TCP 443, TCP 3389, TCP 389, or TCP 548? Those are our 5 different options there to figure out these details. You have to know your port numbers in the A+. The first section of the networking area on your exam objectives is this big list of port numbers. And in fact, Are all of these port numbers on there? I think all of them may be. I think I pulled from every single one of those to see what they are. Maybe one of them is not one that's in that list. Hopefully you'll know what these are when you start going through and trying to figure out those details. If you think you know the answer of what this would be, go to professormesser.com/QA, answer the question there. That's where you want to go. That's going to help you as you go through all of these questions and figure out the details. Whenever I start trying to break down and see if I can figure out what I should do, where I should go with these, it's helpful if you know what some of them are so that you can then start determining which ones it is not. So that might help you a bit. It's the calculatus limitatus. Try to figure out, no, I know it's not that one. I know it's not that one. That's going to help me when you start going through this and breaking those things down. So maybe that will help you too as you're going through this, especially when it's just a list of port numbers. Now, notice on here, it's another one of those cases where we want to be able to understand what these port numbers are, but we need to know more than just the protocol. So hopefully that will be something you can figure out as we go through this too. I think maybe you'll have an idea of what these happen to be. If you want to answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. A system administrator is configuring a firewall to allow file sharing from Microsoft Windows. Which of these should the administrator use to allow this traffic? Is it TCP 445, TCP 443, TCP 3389, TCP 389, or TCP 548? This will be pretty useful for you whenever you start trying to break these down. Let's see how you did with this one to be able to figure out these details. Let's do the how we do button. So the how do we do button, well, if we go with the plurality, not a majority, but if we go with what everybody says, we can see the list that's there. And we know that we have 41% of you that say it's TCP 445. We have 22% of you that say it's TCP 443. 15%, a tie for third, at TCP 3389 and TCP 389. And then 6% say it's TCP 548. So we probably won't go with E, TCP 548 at only 6%, single digits. If we go with, well, not a majority, but with the largest number of answers, 41%, is there TCP 445 is what most people say, and having that there. So hopefully that's one when you're trying to break this out to figure out what this happens to be. I think that might help you as well. I think whenever I try to start determining what these happen to be, I want to be able to break down what each one of these things are. So hopefully you can go through that list and see what they are. The one we were looking for here was Microsoft Windows computers. So Microsoft Windows systems are going to be using a protocol for transferring files and printing called Server Message Block, SMB. You will sometimes see this referred to as CIFS, the Common Internet File System. But for those of us that are Windows people, it's SMB, the big block of cheese. This is where when you start breaking through how SMB works, it has changed a bit through the years. It used to be back in the days prior to Windows, there was an operating system Microsoft created called LAN Manager. Some of you may remember LAN Manager, and you'll see references to LAN Man in some of the Windows things even today on the networking side. LAN Manager did not use TCP/IP. LAN Manager used NetBIOS. NetBIOS was not routable. We had to have this single protocol on the same network, the same subnet effectively as everyone else, the same broadcast domain as all of the other devices. So the thing that you really have to work through when Microsoft realized we need to do TCP/IP, as TCP/IP became more and more important in the industry, they found a way to put the NetBIOS inside of the TCP/IP package. We call this NetBIOS over IP. And you will see on the Windows side, on older Windows operating systems, they may still use some of these NetBIOS over IP protocols. They run at UDP 137, UDP 138, and TCP 139 for name services, datagram service, and session service, respectively. So we had to have 3 separate port numbers just to use that old style NetBIOS. Well, what they realized is that instead of doing name services using NetBIOS over IP, The name service everybody uses is DNS. Let's just use DNS. And the modern Windows systems these days use DNS. They also realized we could take the idea of sharing folders and printing and have a single protocol that we use for that. This is a direct communication of SMB using TCP 445. This gets rid of all the NetBIOS transportation that's encapsulated within IP. It simplifies it a great deal, where you can have devices communicating directly to each other using TCP/IP and no additional protocols inside of it. Very useful to have that functionality there, and a little history for you there too, to know how this all finally came about, how all of these things happened in the world. TCP 445 is the one you'll find most commonly these days on your Windows systems, and 43% of you did choose A, TCP 445. That is the right answer for these. So if you're ever in a situation where you're trying to figure out the details of this and trying to figure out what protocol is it, there may be a number of these that you can simply get rid of. Well, there's my script for the podcast. A number of these that you can get rid of when you're working through this. And TCP 445 is the one that you're going to want to know as you're stepping through this. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these too. And each one of these is going to be important. Make sure you're familiar with these, each one of these protocols and port numbers for your exam. And by the way, there's a list of these in your exam objectives. I will occasionally, like at least once a week or so, people will say, well, what do I need to know port number wise? It's in the exam objectives. Don't go outside of that list. Don't go fewer than what's in that list. You stick right to that list and you're going to be just fine. And it happens to be the exact same list, obviously, from my videos. That will help you as well. So those of you that answered A, TCP 445, nice job. Got that one absolutely right. Let's do another question. This is one that is a multiple choice question that asks, which of the following would be the most useful when using full disk encryption? Which of the following would be the most useful when using full disk encryption? And your possible answers are BIOS supervisor password, TPM, Windows firewall, LoJack for laptops, or secure boot. Those are your 5 different options. Is it A, BIOS supervisor password, B, TPM, C, Windows firewall, D, LoJack for laptops, or E, secure boot? Which of the following would be the most useful when using full disk encryption? If you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. You know the place. You're already doing a great job with this. Lock in your answer. See if you happen to know about full disk encryption and being able to do this. Hopefully it's one you've run into and make that happen too. I think it's one I find useful as well. I did a Windows 7 course. It has since been retired, and it went deep into full disk encryption. And fortunately, the A+ doesn't go as deep as the Microsoft course did, but there are still things that are so important to know about full disk encryption, and this is one of them. So hopefully that's one that you can find. Which would be the most useful when using full disk encryption? And is anybody using full disk encryption? If you got a laptop, you probably should be, especially if your laptop is one that leaves your house, leaves your apartment. You are out in the world with this laptop. Full disk encryption becomes incredibly useful to have. You don't have to worry about your system. Well, you have to worry about your system. You don't want somebody getting their hands on your laptop. But if they did, for some reason, you don't have to worry about your data. That's the important part. And that's why full disk encryption used extensively in many organizations across the board. If you have mobile devices, you're using full disk encryption because you don't want your company's data somehow getting out in the world. So it becomes incredibly useful to have this. But there's some things you must have to be able to use full disk encryption. What are those things? Let's figure it out. Let's see what you think it is. Let's see how we did with this one. 48% of you say it's TPM. 25% of you say you need secure boot. 17% of you say you need a BIOS supervisor password. 5% said LoJack for laptops. 3% say it's Windows firewall. So those are your 5 different options. If we go with the number, we asked the audience, 49% of you say TPM. Is that really the one we should be going with? Full disk encryption, incredibly useful, as I mentioned, because it encrypts everything on the drive. And I mean everything. Your operating system, the boot section. If somebody tried to boot the system, they would not be able to boot it because it goes through and encrypts everything. Well, the thing that you have to have, though, is some type of cryptography inside the system itself. There needs to be some type of hardware that can support the cryptography that's being used for this full disk encryption. If you're on Windows, this full disk encryption, or FDE, is managed through an application called BitLocker. That's what it does. And BitLocker integrates with a device that is on your motherboard called a Trusted Platform Module, a TPM. Trusted Platform Module, many systems already have it built into the motherboard. Other systems may, like this one, may be modular, where they have a module slot, a section on the motherboard. It's even labeled TPM, and there's a separate module you can purchase that connects into that connection on the motherboard to provide the Trusted Platform Module functionality. Because you have this Trusted Platform Module, a lot of the cryptography is happening right in that chip. And so this is a great way not only to be able to enable full disk encryption, you can do so much more with this. It even checks the hardware of your system, can create a secure hardware baseline. If anything changes with your system, it can tell you about this. I would not say in the question in the chat room, we're saying, does the majority of PCs have TPMs on the motherboard now? I don't know if it would be a majority or not, but certainly a large number of them already have the TPM on the motherboard. But you can purchase a motherboard that either does not have a TPM or has an open slot available for the TPM. So it depends on the system you're getting. You'll, of course, need to be able to look. I would probably imagine the majority would these days, but I don't have exact numbers to be able to say exactly one way or the other. And there are ways you can look in the BIOS, and the BIOS will tell you if it has a TPM installed. This may be a requirement for the latest BIOS. The UE5 BIOSes may require a TPM, so it may be one of those that has all of that functionality. Now, the TPM is a hardware encryption cryptography device. You can't really duplicate this in software, but you can do some of the checks or the offline part of this for full disk encryption. If your system does not have a TPM, older versions of Windows would allow you to use a USB key and have the encryption piece stored on the USB key, which is just an awful idea, by the way. Just a horrible idea to have that there. So it's so easy to lose your USB key. It's so easy for USB keys to get overwritten or corrupted. Not the best idea. And the latest versions of BitLocker require that you have a TPM. So that's what you're just going to have to do on your newest systems to be able to do that. If your TPM chip is removed, you will not be able to boot your BitLocker drive unless you have some type of backup of those keys that your administrator might have to be able to have that there. If you're watching this video for continuing education credit, one of the things you'll want to do is follow these instructions to be able to get this digitally signed email from me. What you want to be able to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There is a link there for Contact Us, which is really contact me. It will send me an email. It pops open a form, and in that form, it will ask you for a name, an email address, and a subject line. Put in your name, put in your email address. Put in the subject line, this is the October 220-1001A plus study group, and you'll want to somewhere either in the subject line or somewhere very clear in the text of that message have the super secret code word of the month, which is full disk encryption. I guess it's super secret code words of the month. Full disk encryption are the super secret code words. Please make them very plain so that I can see them very easily. Some of you will write it into a letter of detail somewhere in the middle, and I'll miss it completely, and then you don't get your email, and everybody's sad. Nobody wants that. So make sure you have that there. And that is how you can send me a message, and in about a week or so, I go through these, and I send you back an email that has been digitally signed that says you must have watched this because you followed the instructions and you knew the super secret code words of full disk encryption. So easy. More than happy to do that as well. And I realize a number of you can simply say in your continuing education credit part, I watch this. I think it's nice that you have something that you can audit. So you can go back through this and go, oh, he must have watched this because there's a digitally signed email associated with it. We have time for one more. I think we can squeeze in one more question, can't we? I think we should be able to do this. Last question of the day, or at least the last question I'm going to ask you, because it's not the last question of the day. And the question is, which of these would best describe a cloud-based service where the cost is based on the amount of use? Another cloud-based question. Which of these would best describe a cloud-based service where the cost is based on the amount of use? Is it rapid elasticity? Is it on demand? Is it resource pooling? Is it hybrid? Or is it metered? These are your 5 different options. Which of these would best describe a cloud-based service where the cost is based on the amount of use? Is it rapid elasticity, on demand, resource pooling, hybrid, or metered? Those are your 5 different options. All 5 of those options, by the way, are part of the cloud-based section in your 220-1001. So if you don't recognize any of those terms, you want to go through and make a note of that and make sure you go through those. If you think you know the answer, please no answering in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. Quality assurance. No, that's not what it's for. It's quick and. No, it's something. QA. I'll figure it out. professormesser.com/QA. You'll be able to do that. One of those should be helpful. Being able to go through all of these may be useful because there may be some of these you can cross off your list already. And if you were listening earlier, there's at least one of them you can cross off right now. Queen Anne, maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's what, no, I don't think that's what it is. Something like that. Figure out those details. Cloud-based questions. There's going to be quite a few on your exam. Make sure you're familiar with these technologies and what they are. Which would best describe a cloud-based service where the cost is based on the amount of use? Let's see how we did with this one. We've got a few to go through. Quantitative analysis. Maybe that's what it is. How did we do on this one? 66% of you say it's metered. It's one of the few majorities we got today. 19% of you say it's on demand. We've got 7% that said rapid elasticity, which I just like to say. And then 5% said resource pooling, and 3% say it's hybrid. Well, this idea of paying as you go or paying for what you use is a pretty useful term, a pretty useful thing for cloud computing. In fact, it's one of the advantages up to this point. When you buy a system, you buy software, you buy functionality, you buy it and you own it, and it's a fixed price. Whether you use a little bit of it or whether you use a lot of it. Well, with cloud computing, we have the ability to meter your service. So if you only use a little bit of upload space, you only use a little bit of storage, you only use a little bit of download bandwidth, you only have to pay a little bit. And if you're a company starting out and you don't have a lot of money for this and you don't have a lot of demand, you can keep your costs very low. And then as the company starts to ramp up and you start to get a lot more people, you will pay a little bit more as you go, and you can have at least a way to have those costs included with your business as it gets faster, higher, stronger, and gets bigger. There may be times when a metered service doesn't work for you. It'd be great if you could pay a fat fee, which may also be a flat fee. To have just a block of storage, put everything in this storage. So, for instance, my Google. If you've seen the Google storage, you've got Dropbox. I guess you've got box.com, box.io. I don't think it's .com. I think it's .io. So you've got all these services where you pay a flat fee every month and you get a certain amount of service. You get a certain amount of storage, a certain amount of upload and download, or you can upload and download as much as you want. You pay a flat fee per month. That would be non-metered for having that there. I would not consider paying more of a flat fee for a certain amount of space a metered connection. I would say that would be non-metered, because you can easily transfer as much as you want or as little as you want. You pay the same price, and having those there and being able to have that there. So the metered cloud service is the one we wanted. In fact, 67% of you knew that was the answer. Of course it is. That is your metered service, is 67%. 19% said on demand. On demand is where you can have this technology available. You click a button, you've got it. It doesn't really talk about cost. It doesn't talk about how much you use it. It simply is discussing how you would gain access to that service. And most of cloud computing is based on that on-demand functionality, where the services didn't exist a moment ago. I clicked a button, suddenly they're available to have that there. Rapid elasticity means that you can build out more of these services as the network is demanding it. And then as maybe the demand is decreasing, you can scale back the number of services. So during the holidays, if you work for a retail organization, you may be buying more cloud-based services. January the 1st, those cloud-based services will scale back down at that point again. Resource pooling would be where you purchase a large amount of those resources and the service providers carving out pieces of those as people might need them. A lot more effective and efficient than buying individual computers for people. Instead, you buy one big computer and you simply allocate resources off of that one single device. And then hybrid, we talked about hybrid earlier, where you don't have a public cloud or a private cloud. You kind of using both of those for your services, and the hybrid cloud is a very good way to do that. Well, that is a lot to go through in a very short period of time. If you were the folks that did answer the metered, 67% of you answered that metered answer, and that was the right answer to go with on that one. All of the questions that we did today, by the way, come directly from, and I've mentioned this before, the exam objectives. To be able to get your hands on these objectives, and you should already have these. If you don't have them already, go get them. They are at professormesser.com/objectives. That's the place to go. These objectives are incredibly useful. They detail everything you need to know about the exam. And if you were trying to figure out if you're ready or not to take the exam, this is a great way to go through a checklist that tells you if you've now remembered that. And it will go through the checklist and ask, do you know what rapid elasticity is? Do you know what on-demand is? Do you know what resource pooling is? Do you know what hybrid is? Do you know what metered is? And you'll be able to check those through and make sure you know what those are. I have a link to the objectives on the CompTIA website by simply going to professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups every month. Really, we do two, one for the 1001 and one for the 1002. Come back on Thursday. If you're watching this live, which will be October the 10th, we'll do a 1002 study group. We've also got study groups already scheduled for November the 5th and November the 7th. If you're watching this on a replay and we're way past October and November, you can always find out what the next events are going to be by going to my calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. It's a great way to do it as well. Well, gosh, it's over. We're done. No, we've got more to go. Stick around. We got an after show. So that's useful. We'll be able to go through, and you can ask me questions. That'll be nice to have. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Get a free question every day from the A+ exams at professormesser.com/Twitter. Your subscriptions, by the way, to YouTube are incredibly useful. I have a representative at YouTube that I now can talk to, and it's thanks to your support and showing that you support the channel by going to professormesser.com/YouTube and subscribing. My course notes, of course, available at professormesser.com/1000notes. And don't forget to support us on Amazon. It's a great way that costs you nothing, but it sure helps us a lot, and we appreciate it by going to professormesser.com/Amazon. Stick around. We are going to open up the phone lines. There's plenty more things to talk about. Thank you for being here in this first hour. We'll see you next time on the Professor Messer A+ Study Group. We have so much to go through in the second hour. Let me see if I can get things going on this side. There we go. There I am. Hi, everybody. Let me get the phone lines up and running. I'll start getting those going, and then I'll tell you. I'll be taking questions, by the way, not only from the phone lines, but I'll be taking questions from the chat room as well. So you're welcome. If you don't want to call in, just want to put in a message in the chat room, you're free to do that. and have all of those pieces there. I'll be able to read through them as they are going by. I can scroll back. We can go through that list of them. Let me first get a show started here. I have to call into the show myself. So this takes a moment or two. I appreciate your indulgence as I call in to my own show and have it make some noise here. Do, 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 do. Yes, I know. There it is. It's calling. Is it going to answer? It did answer. I answered my own phone. Isn't that great? And then I type some numbers in.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Oh, that sounds redundant. I say that every time. I can change that, and I just haven't.
Welcome.
See, welcome. How nice to be able to have this here. And now the phone lines are open, which means if you would like to call in and ask really any question you would like, maybe not any question, but almost any question, you're welcome to call in the United States, in the continental United States. You can call in at 855-785-RJ45. West of the Rockies, 855-785-7545. If you're outside of the continental United States, you can still call in for free. You go to Skype, because this is free in Skype. Put a +1 at the beginning. +1, 855-785-7545. So there are a few things you can do to call into that as well. You're welcome to do that and be able to have that there. So a question in the chat room. Thanks for the study group. How would I recommend getting better at troubleshooting? One of the things I mentioned, by the way, whenever I'm talking to people about studying for this exam, is that there's so many different things that you need to do to be able to make this really happen and really study the best. And you don't just use any one thing. It's a mix of different things. If you go to the Professor Messer website, for example, under the different sections for A+ training, Network Plus training, et cetera, I do have a list of recommendations. The A+ study recommendations will put a little bit more detail in this for you because they break it out by the different sections. I'm going to get rid of my chat here so you can see it, because I always tell people you need 4 things. You need some videos. So the links to the videos are there. You need some good books. That's important as well because books will teach you differently than the videos teach you. Lots of Q&A. So I've got some options here for some Q&A practice tests that are here. And then plenty of hands-on. Now, it's really difficult to get your hands on some of these things. One of the things that I find real challenging with finding good labs is that they're a little bit different to try to find exactly what you want to be able to use. So I put some options here. There are some good ones here for the A+, the Network Plus, some of the other ones that are here too. That one says Network Plus. I need to add in the labs for the A+. There's another link. There are some labs available and books available on my site in those recommendations. So those of you in the chat room are asking what books are good. I put 4 really good books right there. So you can try those out and see if those fit for you. Maybe some good ones to have available. And you'll find those all under the A+ study resources on my website. That may be something that helps you as well. Try to put together, because it's a common question people ask. So try to put one together for A+, for Network Plus, for Security Plus. And as I find new ones, I add them into that list. So that kind of makes it available. There are some third parties out there that have labs. Some folks in the chat room mentioned Test Out. It's an expensive option, but it's one that is available. And there's some other labs I did find on Amazon recently I'm going to add into that list today. Some useful ones. And of course, as you're going through these videos and I'm showing you the system information, I'm showing you the event viewer, I am demonstrating some of the command line functions, you can follow along with me. For instance, I showed how to do the ping and the trace route, and all of those commands I'm doing on my computer, you can do exactly the same commands on your computer because I used IP addresses that are available out on the internet that will work from anywhere. So that's a very good way to go through those as well. There's the challenge with labs is really finding the right thing, and just using the operating system is often one of the best things you can do, especially for the 1002 exam. One of the things I have mentioned in other study groups is modern.ie, M-O-D-E-R-N, modern.ie. Modern.ie is a Microsoft developer website, And under the Tools pull-down menu, there's an option here for virtual machines. So you can find a VM for Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10, all available to download for free to use in a lab. You can't use these for any type of system that would be in production, but for non-production uses, you're able to use the end user license agreement allows you to use those. And they're free, which is really useful. Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10 for free. You can download, run in a virtual machine, have on your desktop immediately. Yeah, that's a great one to have. That's at modern.ie. I'll put this in the chat room so you can find it. It's modern.ie. There we go. Back in the day, folks in the chat room were asking about practice exams. And back in the day for the 900 series exams, I had some books for those. I do have plans to create books for the 1000 series. In fact, they're currently in production. So if you're someone who's looking for more Q&A, there will be more Q&A coming. Obviously, these things take a little bit of time. I'm making them into a format that is something you can use for some ongoing practice exams, an actual practice exam. So those will be coming probably in the next, I'm hoping next 3 to 6 months, somewhere in there. So keep an eye out. You'll see that those will be coming. Those will be really good. For those of you that have been watching on the website, I just released a set of practice exams for Security Plus. So there's a new book for practice exams where you go through 3 separate practice exams. It has performance-based questions for each one of those. It has multiple choice questions for those. I describe why the answer is right. I describe why the other answers are wrong. And I give you links to the videos. So there's really no Q&A book like it. I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the A+. I think that'd be great. And Network Plus. Why not? That'd be a great thing to have there as well. Whenever I start trying to figure out, in fact, where do I go to find good questions on the internet, it's hit or miss. It's so difficult. So I understand where you're going with that. Question in the chat room, any difference in downloading the exam objectives 1001 or 1002? Well, the difference is one's for the 1001, one's for the 1002. Those are 2 separate exams. For the A+, you have to take both of these exams. So it depends which one you're studying for. If you're studying for the 220-1001, that's what you want to do. 220-1002, that's the one you want to do as well. Hopefully that will help you decide which one of those you want to download. Eventually, you're going to need both of them, right? You'll need to have both of those. I don't recommend studying for both the exams at the same time, however. I see this sometimes where people will take both exams on the same day. And I have to wonder what their study process was like, because that is intense to do both of those. I highly recommend you study for one at a time. It doesn't matter which order you take them in. Study for the 220-1001, pass that exam, then shift gears and study for the 220-1002, or vice versa. I guess you could do them both on the same day if you're someone who has a lot of industry experience. You already know a lot of the content that's in these exams. So go through and see if you can break that out. That might help you as you're trying to figure out which way to go with these. I think the exam itself, the 220-1001 to 220-1002, they're difficult enough on their own. So hopefully that's an idea, because if you were studying for both of them, I've had people send me notes saying, this is really tough to study for both of these at the same time. I say, well, stop doing that. You'll find it much easier when you can do that and have that there. Can you take the exam online by using a kind of platform? Currently, no. I don't know if there's any plans to do that either, at least none that were obvious. There are some CompTIA exams I know in the past. I think they still offer certain CompTIA exams as some that you could take online at home. It's actually a proctored exam. They're watching you through your camera, and have you move your computer around, check the room, make sure you're not looking at something that they can't see. Those exams are for the smaller certification exams. Currently, CompTIA does not provide any type of online examination for their A+, their Network Plus, or their Security Plus. Just something they don't do. it'd be kind of difficult to make that happen. I don't know if they could scale it to make that happen because it requires a person watching you for 90 minutes on your camera. That's not creepy at all. And watching you take this exam. So that's one of those where it just doesn't apply for what we're doing here. And having the A Plus, Network Plus, or Security Plus, they probably just could not scale it up. It's probably expensive to have someone do that. It's probably much less expensive to partner with the Pearson VUE and have you go to one of the Pearson VUE facilities to take that one. That would make sense to me. Question in the chat room. I'm going through a career change to IT. Once you pass the A+, how do you offset a lack of IT-specific experience when applying for jobs? And what are some entry-level jobs you can aim for? Well, in the IT world, the entry-level position is a help desk. As I was mentioning before the study group started in the pre-show, I was talking about my first job was actually pre-help desk. It was a job worse than help desk. It was a job, wasn't really worse than, it was different. It was more grunt work than help desk. I worked at a computer store. I delivered cables. I delivered computers. I set up computers. This particular store had the contract for the governmental agencies in the area. So when the governmental agencies would buy a computer, part of the contract was the computer was brought to someone's desk and set up so that the government didn't have to have an IT person do this. So I was that person. I would lug in my cart the big CRT monitor, the computer, bring everything in, unbox it, get it all cabled up, plug it in, make sure the operating system was on it, and then I would leave. It was a very, very simple job at that level. And there were some times I was able to do some upgrades, upgrade memory, install or upgrade hard drives. There was a little bit of that as well. When you're moving from one type of role to another, so if you're in transportation and you're moving into IT, you're in healthcare and you're moving into IT, you're in manufacturing and moving into IT, you actually might have an advantage over other people because you have experience in that particular business. So one of the things I recommend to people who are doing a career change is see what IT options are available in the place you used to work or in companies that are similar to the places you used to work. If it was transportation, talk to the transportation companies, because having somebody in IT at a hospital who understands the healthcare part is incredibly useful. Having somebody in transportation IT department who understands the nuances on the transportation side, remarkably useful. In fact, in IT, it's one of the things we struggle with is that we hire a bunch of techies, generally speaking, but who knows the business? Is it insurance? Is it transportation? Is it manufacturing? Is it healthcare? What is it? Well, I don't know. I know how to do this with Windows. I don't know anything about insurance. I don't know anything about transportation. I don't know anything about healthcare. But if you have somebody in IT who does know the business, it makes IT better. And so there's some knowledge you already have that can really, really help you as you're moving from one type of job role into an IT role, and don't discount that. That's very, very useful. The other thing I'll mention to you, and this would really apply to everybody, whether you're changing your careers or you're just getting started in IT, you don't have experience. You have no IT experience. You need to know people. Now, if you've already been in the industry, you might already know some people at your organization who can help vouch for you in this particular IT group. But let's say you've moved to a new area or you just don't know anybody in IT, you need to start going to some local user group meetings. Go to the local Microsoft user group meeting, Cisco user group meeting, technology user group meeting. Start meeting the people there, especially the Microsoft and the Cisco. Those people are going to be working for the local companies, and you'll get to meet them. Hi, my name is, what do you do? Where do you work? Oh, really, I'm interested in getting a job with that company. What would you recommend that I need to know before I walk in the door to get a job in your help desk? And they will be glad to tell you. It's a user group meeting. You're there to meet people and talk to each other and try to help each other through all of this. That's where you want to go to be able to start getting names in that list. Add people to the LinkedIn. And some of you know this and some of you don't. Most organizations have a finder's fee they give to employees when somebody is hired. If it's a friend or family and they're hired into the organization, they give you money if you brought them in. So a lot of people I used to work with would collect these resumes. Oh, you're interested in a job here? Hand me your resume. I will give it to HR. If you're hired, you'll get a job and I'll get $100, $200, $300, whatever it happens to be. So it's one of those things where you might actually find people are very receptive to you getting a job in their company because they get some money in their pocket. Kind of nice to have that there. So there's a couple of things you can work on, is finding the right niche to be able to take advantage of the knowledge you already have, and perhaps even more importantly, knowing people in these places, whether they're in IT or not. You know somebody in that company, that goes very far during the interview process. We like to hire people and work with people we know. So it helps if somebody else in the organization knows you. Oh, you know that person? Well, that helps a lot, because now we can trust we know who you are now. If they can vouch for you, then we know you're going to show up on time and do a good job. That these days, that goes a long way. Strangely enough, goes a long way. I'm not sure why that happens either. It's so hard to find people who will simply arrive on time, do a great job, be happy with all of us, and keep the party going. Very difficult to have that there sometimes. So those are my recommendations for somebody who's changing careers in IT or just getting started in IT. Both of those will really, really help you. Is the A+ alone enough to prepare someone for an entry-level data center tech or NOC engineer position? Nothing individually is enough to prepare you for anything in IT. There's no one thing you can do and that's it, you're prepared. Nope, doesn't work that way. It's not like being a nurse. If you're a nurse, you take a nursing licensing exam, you pass that exam, you can now be a nurse. And people will hire you because you're now a licensed nurse. Well, it doesn't work that way in IT. There's no single thing you can do that will guarantee you a job. There's no single thing you can do that will give you all the knowledge you need to do any job in IT. In fact, you will find, interestingly enough, in IT, you will never know enough to do the jobs you need to do. What? Does that make, really? Yes. In fact, if you're in a position in IT where you walk in the door in the morning and you got all this down cold, you know everything you need to know, nothing surprises you, you know exactly how to handle every situation, and you're done at the end of the day, you're in the wrong job, because IT is much more than that. Throughout your career, you will constantly be learning content, be learning information, be learning about how these things work. And as soon as you know how it works, new technologies suddenly appear. New applications suddenly arrive. It never ends throughout your entire IT career. So if you're someone who you're not accustomed to that type of pace, put yourself in that mindset, because that's how IT generally works, is you will be constantly behind the 8 ball. People will present you with challenges and projects and things you need to know that you will have no idea how this stuff works. This happens in meetings all the time. Oh, we're implementing this thing over the weekend. We're going to put it on this server and we're going to roll it out. Like, great. We are on that. Thank you so much. You leave the room, you're Googling, what did they just say? I have to know how to, okay, what's that application? Grab the manual. Let me read the manual. It's just normal. The way we do things is now we have to get very familiar with the technology that up to this point we did not know existed. That's normal IT to me. That's how it works. So whenever you start to find that you're in a situation and you're concerned that you don't know everything, no. Don't be concerned. You're exactly in the right place, because you can learn it. That's the great part about IT. You'll just learn what that is. Now you know that other thing. Now let's find something else I don't know and let's learn that. And you'll start to find your knowledge of these things makes you a very valuable asset within your organization and elsewhere. So that if you need to go to a higher level position, you want to get paid more money, you want to be able to do more things, this enables you to do that. There's very few types of jobs in the world that provide you with that level of upward mobility. In IT, upward mobility is constant and limitless, it seems. I went from having that very first delivery / installation job, which was the bare bones basic of technology, and was able to work into a senior systems engineer position where I back during those early days could not imagine having a job. They pay you this much for the job and you're able to do these things. This is great. But you have to accumulate that knowledge and move up over time. But IT is one of those rare types of industries where the opportunities are just there. And the opportunities are waiting for you to be able to learn and move into them. The speed at which you move and the direction you go is really completely up to you. It's remarkable that it works that way. And that's one of the things that excites me about technology. That's one of the reasons I do this, is because I want people to learn this information so that they can get a job or get a better job and move to the next thing. And once you get into this cycle, you get IT, you realize, wow, there's so much we can do with this, so many places to go, that not only is good for your own personal knowledge and being able to work in IT, but now you can get a nicer house. You can support a larger family. You can move to a different place. All of those things that people have wanted to do. And it's just all there waiting for you. So it's an exciting time in what we are doing as technical people to be able to make that happen. So that's one that whenever people want to be able to find their niche, and want to know what they have to know to be able to do a certain thing, there's going to be a bare minimum, and then you're going to have to keep adding to that. Always, 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 always adding to that. There was never a time in my IT career where I felt I was solid, like I knew everything I needed to know. Really never a time. The only time it might have been, I knew it was time to leave. Like, I already know all of this. I now need to do this next thing. And usually that's when you're moving into different areas of IT. You've been doing desktop and server administration. You want to get into networking. Jump off the cliff. You're working in networking. You want to be able to get into security. You jump off the cliff. So this is one of those things that will enable you as you go through time to have those there. What do you suggest for burnout? Well, this is something that it is a concern in any industry. It may be a larger concern in IT than others. I don't know. I've only been in IT for all of my career. It's not entirely true, but I would say for most of my careers, the things I did prior to IT were retail and things that you would do when you just needed a job in college. And burnout was, I guess it could be an issue really in any position, but we tend to get wrapped up in forcing a lot of time and hours on people. And I don't think people who are management within some companies don't exactly realize how much time technical people are spending on some of these things. Burnout is self-imposed in many ways. If you're working in an organization that is working you what I call half days, which is 8 to 8, if you're working in a 12-hour day scenario, that's a situation where you're in the wrong job. You're working with the wrong people. If you bring this up and saying, we're all working way too much, you should not be working people as much as we're working. And they say, no, we're a 12-hour-a-day company. Well, this is the great thing about IT that I just mentioned. There are other companies out there that are not doing this. And there are other places you can work out there that are completely different from a stress perspective. There was one job change I made where I was working in a very intense, very high pressure. We're having to do overnights, go, 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 hurry, hurry, hurry. The customers are yelling, hurry, you're awful, do it faster. And then I left that organization and went to a completely different IT job for a completely different company. And suddenly the clouds moved away. The sky was bluer. The suites were sweeter. I could hear birds singing again. It changes your perspective on the world. If you're working somewhere where you're burning out, you're in the wrong place. Not every place in the world is like this. There are places that are managed well. There are places that are not managed well. That's not an IT thing. So just don't let that happen to you. And have those pieces there. Not something you want to run into either. It's a good warning sign. Eventually, you start to see the flags. You start to see the warning signs when you're in the interview. The phone's going off constantly. People are running in and out. And you realize, not sure I want to stay here. Not sure this is the job for me. Maybe I'll do something else. Thank you so much. That's where I go from a burnout perspective. And I think a lot of people feel that they don't have anywhere they can go. That's probably the least concerns in IT. You can really go anywhere. And that helps. Right now, jobs are good. You can find jobs in a lot of different places at a lot of different levels. So right now, with the economy, at least in the United States, we're in a pretty good place right now. If you're planning to make a move, now's a good time to do it. And finding the job that you want and finding the job that makes sense for you. There was a good example before I leave this. I know I'm talking a lot about it, but I'll talk to you about someone. I was working a job that was relatively demanding hours-wise, but not incredibly stressful. It was one that was a systems engineer position. It was one that involved a lot of travel up and down the East Coast of the United States. So I would hop on a plane in the morning. I would fly to a city. I would meet with customers. At the end of the day, I would go back to the airport. I'd fly to the next city and stay in a hotel that night, wake up the next morning, go see customers, go to the airport, fly to another city. So I was doing 3 or 4 cities a week in the worst scenario, and then flying home for the weekend. And I met someone who was working in a government agency, and I said, you'd be really good at this. They were so sharp. They were really good at this. And I said, you would be really good at doing what I'm doing. You'd probably make more money. It would be something that would be a next move for you. And he said, well, you know what? I love the job where I am. I like the people I work with. I feel like I'm doing something good for my community. And the flexibility on the hours for me here is fantastic. I have small kids. We do these types of things. And his job, even though it probably paid less than what I was making, was perfect for what he wanted to do. So there is a right job for everyone. It's not always about the money. For him, it was about the flexibility of his time. He was able to take care of his family. He had other things going on with his family that he needed to take care of, and this job allowed him the flexibility to do that. Those are the things that also make a better world for you. So think about those things too when you're working somewhere where, if you're asking a question that suggests, what do I suggest for burnout? I would suggest looking at job postings. So I should have just said that, and we could have been done at the very beginning. Maybe that would be it. What CompTIA certificates would you recommend for a computer science student? I would not recommend any CompTIA certifications for a computer science student. For those of you that aren't not familiar with how these things break out in the industry, we have information technology, which is generally the operational side of technology. It's the cloud computing, it's the data center, it's in the servers, it's the workstations, it's the operating systems, it's the databases, it's the high-speed networking, it's the security. It's making sure that everything is working the way it should. Then there's the computer science side. And generally speaking, computer science is the application development side. It's the hardware manufacturing side. It's the side that is building the internals of all of those things that we use. It's the one that is creating the database software. It's the one that's writing the application to use the database. It's generally a programming or a development effort when you talk about computer science. The two worlds of IT and computer science, as badly as the industry would like to squeeze them together, they are not squeezed together at all. Don't believe the hype. We're not going to have a bunch of programmers working in IT. You're not going to have a bunch of IT people trying to do programming. It's not going to happen because, as I mentioned earlier, you don't know, you're never going to be able to learn everything you need to know anyway. You're going to throw C++ on top of that? No, you're not. And by the way, Python and scripting is not programming in the way I'm using these terms. I understand that people can call it a programming language. Scripting is not the same thing. You're not developing an app. There's not a huge object-oriented process. The nuances of application development are skills that have to be learned over years of time where all you do is write programs. You don't have somebody in IT that has that kind of time to be able to do it. So Generally, the certificates for IT don't really apply very much to people who are in computer science. Now, I have worked with computer science people who have wanted to move into IT, no longer do the programming. That's a little bit different. In those cases, the A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus are a good trio to look at to see if it fits the organization you would like to move to. But that's one of those situations where you do not see a lot of overlap between what traditionally is considered computer science and traditionally considered information technology. So I don't see that. In fact, there's not a lot of programming certifications. Microsoft has some, and that's probably some of the best places to go for some of those. The only place where you really get into what people, they call it programming, but it's really scripting, is the cloud-based services and cloud-based certifications. That probably would be the best place where they would overlap. The cloud is fantastic for automation, for orchestration, for being able to have the system automatically detect that things are getting busy, automatically build out a new web server, a new database server, a new middleware server, and suddenly you've got more capacity and you never had to touch a thing or even know it happened. That's the beauty of the cloud. The problem with cloud is that you have to know how to script all of those things. You have to plan for every scenario. You have to be able to automate that process. And that is scripting. That is the DevOps. It's not dev, it's scripting ops is what that is. And by the way, we've always done this. People in operations, people who've been managing servers and networks and security throughout the ages have always scripted. This has never been anything that we have not done. This has always been in place. We've always tried to make things easier and faster. And we do it with scripting. We do it with API calls. We're pretty good with PHP. We're pretty good with Python. It's just the normal thing we do. So to somehow have people consider this now a big new thing that suddenly we're going to have IT people script, well, thanks. I will consider doing that if you will pay me more money. Maybe that's what the benefit is now. We can say, well, sure, we'll learn scripting for more money, having already scripted for the last 20 years. I'll be glad to consider doing that for you and have those pieces there. Very quickly, how long will the SY0501 be relevant before it's replaced? You'll probably see the retirement of the Security Plus SY0501 probably in the middle of 2021. So if you're studying for that, you got plenty of time to be able to do that. Plenty of time for those. Let's quickly, we got some other questions coming into the chat room. Let's quickly first go to the phone lines. Hello, caller. What's your name and where are you calling from? Caller.
Hey, I'm Tyler, and I'm calling from Omaha.
Hello, Tyler. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, so I want to get my A+, N+, and Security Plus as fast as possible, but also be able to understand and retain what I'm learning as well. I was wondering what you would suggest. I've been studying for about a month now with the A+, and I'm about to take the 1001 probably in about a week and a half. But I mainly just wanted to get your advice on the best way to go about getting those 3 certifications in the fastest amount of time possible.
Well, speed is always a challenge when you deal with these types of certifications. And my recommendation is always the same thing over and over. The first thing I always say is there's no shortcuts, because there really isn't. All 4 of those certs are quite broad in the amount of information you need to know, and people learn in different ways. So this is also something that has to be customized a bit for each individual person. But it consists of 4 different areas. The first is, and I mentioned this when I was going through my recommendations for A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, is you need some videos to go through, because it's nice to watch somebody perform some of these command line functions and get an idea of what they're doing. Also a good book, because a book is able to get much more detailed in what you're trying to learn, but it also teaches you differently. So you can watch something in a video and read the same thing in a book, and you're learning that content in a different way. I think it's firing different synapses in our brain. It allows us to learn a little bit better. The third is getting plenty of Q&A. Once you've gone through the books and the videos, do you really understand the content? And one way is to test yourself with Q&A. And the last is for hands-on. And this is especially important for the A+ and the Network Plus, to some degree the Security Plus, but there's less of a hands-on component for Security Plus. Certainly A+ and Network Plus expect a good bit of hands-on. And again, hands-on is teaching you differently than watching a video or reading a book. None of them are better or worse than the other. Some of them may work better for you than the others might. So that's the customization part. But I think if you got all four of those different things all working together, then you're probably in the best possible position to learn as much as you can in the shortest period of time.
Okay, thanks. How many months? I mean, I know it's like super broad, but like, what would be like a realistic time frame? Like, say, like 6 to 8 months, or just kind of getting a feel for how long I should be studying and how much time per day, which I know would change based on the person, but just as a generalized answer.
It's so dramatically different from person to person. Some people can pour through this information. They've worked with computers. They put them together themselves. They've been in the industry a certain number of years, and they could spend 2 weeks and pass an A+ exam. Other people, and what I found is the average for most people is usually about 3 months per exam. Now, obviously, if you are spending more time studying, more time watching videos, more time doing the hands-on, more time getting the Q&A, then you're probably going to be studying and getting this information faster. So there are ways to accelerate this, but it really is more time studying. There's no set amount per day per person either, because some people are able to learn this content faster than others. So I can't say here's an absolute time that if you spend this amount of time per day, you can get it done in a certain amount, because you may find that you're able to take that 3-month average and squeeze it down to a month and a half and greatly increase the amount of speed for learning all of that content. One advantage you will have for what you're trying to do is you will find there's a little bit of overlap in the Network Plus from the A+, and there's a little overlap in the Security Plus from the Network Plus. So you'll be able to use a little bit of this information as you go, and that might help you accelerate the process as well. But I would think start with a baseline of 3 months and see if you can squeeze a little faster from there. You'll start to get the hang of it, because I think you'll be able to use the same study process for the A+, for the Network Plus, and from the Security Plus. The exam objectives are very similar in style. The books are very similar in style. And I think the exams are similar in their difficulty level. There are a little bit of differences in difficulty between A+ and Security Plus, but I think overall the exams obviously the content's very different, but the difficulty level is relatively similar, and that will probably help you if you're planning to do these all at one time. So that's my recommendations for you. This may be something where you just have to spend some time on that first exam and see how it goes.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much. I'm definitely seeing how once I get a certain get the right study habits set up with the A+, and then I pass the A+, it'll be much easier to pass the N+ and the Security Plus, because I'll already have those habits in place. I already know kind of how to attack it.
Yep, I think that's
a
great way to look at it too. And the more you study, you'll find the faster it goes. Best of luck.
Thank you so much.
I think that's always the challenge when you start trying to find the right flow for studying. You really have to make it work that way. Whenever I start to try to do this, that's where I get into trouble, because I have so little time to be able to study at a particular time of day. It almost needs to be the same time of day for me. It needs to be the same amount of time. I have to carve it out. And then after a while, that's where it starts to happen for me. So I think that's probably where I would focus on too, is trying to find that exact place to go to be able to find the flow for you. Some people could spend all day studying. They don't have to go to class. They don't have a job, or you have to find that point. If you work at night, maybe study in the morning. Maybe first thing in the morning works best for you. Maybe the last thing at night works best for you. You have to try those out and see what makes sense for what you're doing. Well, let's go back to the phones. Let's go to the 305 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, how's it going, Professor? My name is Danny. I'm calling from Miami. I had a quick question for you. I got my 901, 902 December of 2018. I'm currently working in a hospital. I'm looking to transfer into the IT department, so I've been shadowing with their team, getting experience because I don't have any real relevant experience in IT. So I'm going around with them. The position that I'm going to be going for is basically kind of like a hybrid help desk / desktop support. But they, you actually have to go out into the field and physically, fix printers, fix computers, things like that. And they want people that know that stuff already like the back of their hands. So I'm wondering, are there any certifications, anywhere that I can go and learn Windows 10, troubleshooting, things like that? Should I read up on 1001, 1002, since it's more recent, or I don't know if you have any recommendations?
Well, knowing what I know about hospitals in South Florida and how big they are, I lived in South Florida for 10 years. That's where I met Mrs. Professor Messer, because she lived in Hialeah. So if you you look at Baptist, you look at some of the other hospitals on the.
That's actually where I'm at.
Okay, so you're talking about a huge hospital, many different locations, tons of employees, and by the way, a fantastic IT group, because I've worked with them over the years. I don't know if any of the people I know are still there, but they have an impressive IT infrastructure, and they really do things right. Whether you're working at their hospitals in the Coral Gables area, or you're down in the South Miami part, or you're even up to where they've started to move closer on the coast. It's remarkable the broad scope that medicine has with IT. And getting into it and working with desktops and printers like you're mentioning is a great place to learn this particular industry, and a great environment to do it in, because their use of workstations, mobile technologies, wireless networks, and printers is so intense. That's sort of the way that the industry with healthcare works. One of the things that I would recommend, because you're now at a point where you're going to have to know a lot about Windows 10. You're going to be using parts of the operating system that many organizations never get into, because you've probably got some type of card-based system that recognizes when a nurse walks up to a computer. It recognizes who it is. They have to authenticate. When they walk away, it locks the system. These are authentication requirements not a lot of people deal with. So I would recommend maybe looking at the Microsoft certification specifically for Windows 10. When I was first getting my first Microsoft certifications, I thought I knew Windows, and then I took a Microsoft cert and realized this thing goes deep, and it goes into very detailed information about how the operating system works and how to start troubleshooting these things, where you can really start to understand the entire printing process. You know exactly where the spooler service is. You know where the files are stored for the spooler service. So when it doesn't work anymore, you know exactly where to go in the operating system to delete those individual files to finally get everything running again. Unfortunately, the A+ just doesn't go that deep. It talks about restarting the spooler. But when the spooler's not restarting, it doesn't tell you where to go next to be able to fix those things. So that's what my recommendation will be for that particular role in that particular environment, is to be able to do that. And that way you're able to not just sort of have a broad understanding of what the spooler is. You can actually get into the details of it with your digital wrench and your digital screwdriver and really fix that thing when there's a problem. When you get into printers, oh boy, that is its own animal, because it's a physical hardware device. That's more of a process where you'd have to go to the printer manufacturer to get that level of certification. And quite honestly, not a lot of people do. A lot of organizations will partner with a third party to be able to handle the printers, and they'll just simply swap them out when there's a problem, and they'll have them fix them on the back end and keep swapping out as they go. It really depends on the organization. But I think the Microsoft certifications, especially the ones for Windows 10, are really going to be the ones that will help you the most for the type of role you mentioned.
Perfect. Yeah, because I know that they retired the MCSA for Windows 10, and they came out with the MD100 and the
Right.
MD101. But I didn't know if those were more administrator role, or if even learning them and going for that cert would help me in a troubleshooting role. Because I've seen the MTAs. Some people say they're not worth the time just to go for something higher, but I didn't know if the modern desktop certifications would be worth it for this example.
I would have to agree. For the type of job role you were mentioning, the MTA probably is not low level enough. The MTAs, for the people not familiar with this, the Microsoft Technology Associate, I think is what that is. It's sort of the A+, Network Plus, Security Plus level certifications from Microsoft. I really do think you should find, and you have to dig around for it now, because for some reason, Microsoft is kind of relegating their operating systems to the back burner for some reason with their certs. But there are some Windows 10 certs in there, and those are the ones I would recommend you going after. I think there are 3 of them just for Windows 10. One of them is specific to the administration, troubleshooting of that system. There's another one that is about managing, imaging, kind of the higher level admin. But there's another one that really focuses on troubleshooting the operating system itself. That's where I would focus.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for your help. Thank you for the time. And you were one of the reasons why I passed the A+ back then. So thank you for everything you do and taking the time to help us out with this.
Happy to do it, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
And to be quite honestly, you're the one that did the hard part on that one. So you had to go in and take the test and pass it. So well done. Hospitals are interesting places. I married a nurse. Healthcare, I am not a healthcare person. I can work with computers. It's the people part. So we're a good combo team. But she sort of explained to me how things are working in the hospital. And she would bring up, see how this works, see what we're doing with this. And I really learned a lot about that particular set of technologies. It's so different in hospitals. They are really using technology in a way that nobody else is. And you almost become an expert in hospitals when you work in IT in a hospital. It is quite remarkable. And that's why I mentioned to people that if you're in healthcare and you want to get into IT, you really need to slide into IT at a hospital. You will be so valuable to have that there, because they can't pull somebody like me who has no healthcare experience into a healthcare IT role and expect me to do as well, because I know nothing about the hospital side of things. That's the real challenge, making that happen. Let's go back to the phones real quick, and then we'll go back to some questions in the chat room. Back to the call, 607 area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is Chris. I'm calling from Destin, Florida.
Oh, hello, Chris. Just down the street. What can we do for you?
Yes. I am a professional golfer by trade, and I've had health issues that prevent me from playing. So I'm trying to branch into a different type of job, and I've always had a passion for IT. So I'm trying to leverage my customer service and also my business management background to see where I can branch out the best way possible.
This is good. The whole problem you've got is more of a geography problem. Not that 30A is such a bad place to live, because it's a gorgeous part of the world.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
But the challenge you've got is there's not a lot of computers around. You got a beautiful beach. It's really now, how do you find a role working with an organization that's going to have any type of footprint, that's going to want to pay you enough to be able to work in an IT role in that area? There's not a lot of huge companies in that area. You would have to kind of, I guess you could, of course, drive into Panama City, or even as far as Pensacola on the other side. That's a heck of a commute. But you could at least find some places there where you could maybe have more of a field role in those organizations. There are certainly places in your area that have computers and need someone to work on them. And it might also be an opportunity for that particular part of the world to start having small businesses or a small business that is able to help the other small businesses in your area get going. There's all those little storefronts along 30A that are very seasonal, but they all have point of sale systems. They all have requirements to keep their data backed up. They all are needing to move to the next operating system. They all need to get rid of viruses. They all need to patch their systems. And I have no idea whether there's somebody in that area or not who's taking care of them. It may be an opportunity to be able to have a company that takes care of places like that. I listen to, for example, on my podcast list is the Mike Tech Show. I think that's a great example of somebody who not only talks tech, but he has a business where that's what he does. He takes care of small businesses' computer needs. And there are such important nuances. I just mentioned on the last call how healthcare is so unique. Managing a small business's technology is also unique as well because they don't have an IT team. So there I think is an opportunity to perhaps find places in the area that need somebody to provide that. Your other option would then be to maybe look further out at Panama City or further to the west and try to find larger organizations that might have a warehouse or need to have somebody who is in a role that is a remote user, because a lot of companies can't afford to have somebody in that particular area just because of the geography. Maybe that's an opportunity to work and you cover everything from Tallahassee to Pensacola. I've seen jobs like that as well. There's printer technicians, Dell reps, or companies that do remote repairs of laptops. And that's nothing but being on the road all day and driving back and forth, and you're in your own geography. And you're meeting people that way. So there are some IT opportunities there. You're just going to have to be very, very creative because of the geography that you're in.
Okay. Thank you for the information. And yeah, it's a beautiful area, but there's nobody in this area that does, major IT work like that. It's all individually based, and it's all up to the individual company. And at the company I'm at, I'm a golf pro. They have me do a lot of the on-site stuff. We have our own IT people, but they have me do a lot of that work, and they're not really valuing that part of me. So, as I've stepped less into a playing role and more into a management role, those are parts that they're not valuing. So I think that you're dead on with having a business that caters to those people, because yes, we have a ton of small businesses in this area that do not have anything close to the right amount of infrastructure that they need.
Well, it's interesting, though, that golf has become much more technologically implemented now in these different places. Maybe not in Destin, but if you go to Orlando and Tampa and Miami, you just go to a driving range and it's all technology. They've made these driving ranges fun because you can be on a driving range, hit the ball, and it shows you exactly where it's going. They gamify the whole thing. It becomes more of an evening out, and all of that is run with technology. There are opportunities also on the pro side and working with this would be larger country clubs that would have to be in those larger geographies like Orlando and places south, where they have technologies where they need a customer rep who can go in and maintain and sell these technologies to help people better their golf game. You're not going to find a lot of that in Destin. You may have to make some decisions on, do I want to move to a larger area or do I want to stay here and do something different? But you're still in Florida. It's not going to snow on you.
No, absolutely not. That's why I came here.
So there's at least some options there. And if you're able to use your knowledge of golf and combine that with technology, I think that's a win-win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's kind of where I've been going. And I've been thinking about working with TrackMan because they have the best product. It's dual Doppler radars, and it's incredible tech.
I love this idea.
And I've been thinking about leaning in that direction because there's not a lot of people that they all have to lean on IT people to do that work, but none of those IT people have any idea about the subtle nuances of a golf swing, and there's nobody that bridges that gap.
I think that's exactly what I'm talking about, and that's you're right on the right place to go with this. And as we've seen, this is only going to get bigger and more of this as we go along. Just the things we're seeing with technology on golf, on television, in the country clubs, and for entertainment. There are plenty of opportunities out there. Now you just have to figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate your insight and your time. And, this is like the first kind of stuff that I've been going at. And your website's been a great help, because I've been trying to get my A+ certification as well, just to give me a good stepping off point to say, hey, I got all these golf skills plus this.
That's a good leg out. And I think that's a good opportunity to show somebody in that particular area, yes, I have the chops on the golf side and on the technical side. Let's see if we can make a run of it. That's a great idea.
Okay, well, I appreciate it, and I think that's the direction I'm going to go with. I really appreciate your time.
Let us know how it goes. Best of luck.
All right, thank you.
That's what a great combination, though. Kind of a fun combination. You can't go wrong with that. I'd like to play this game and then put technology in it. Why didn't I do that? That seems like what I should have done for this. Really the challenge. So, folks in the chat room, got some questions there. Some questions that have been going since we were talking about security. We were talking about CEH. Somebody in the chat room mentioned, I don't necessarily like the CEH, the Certified Ethical Hacker, because they have had problems with security in the past. I don't know if I've completely written them off, but I'm very hesitant to recommend CEH. The problem I have in my brain, and I've mentioned this before, is I've read through the exam objectives for the Certified Ethical Hacker, and they're really good. And the certification itself continues to be popular. The problem I've had in the past is that the CEH website was hacked into, and they managed to get their hands on people's personal identification. So you have to provide a picture ID to the folks doing the CEH as during the registration process. And somehow people were able to get into the site and obtain the pictures and of the IDs. So yeah, it is a little ironic, a little scary. What one can assume at this point, and what I really need to do is reach out to the people that manage the Certified Ethical Hacker and see how they change things. Mrs. Professor Messer brought up to me the other day, you're limiting a lot of people really interested in CEH. You've got the knowledge base, because I used to work in that particular area with security. But what have they done? Have they fixed things? Are they better? And she mentioned to me, we have had our healthcare, 2 retailers, probably 3 retailers, and then a few others, banks and other financial organizations that have also been hacked, that also have all of our personal information. And she's saying, don't limit yourself, because all of these hacks and things that occurred happened years ago. Technology and security has changed a lot since then. Should I really be limiting myself in that way? And she's not wrong, but it makes me uncomfortable to recommend a certification to somebody knowing that they've had problems keeping their information private in the past. It's not really the hacking part of it as much as the bad guys were able to get their hands on your personal information. Now, these days, we know we all have different security now. It all is managed differently. There's encryptions that we do. One can naturally assume that not just CEH, but everybody is putting these types of security pieces in place. And I'm sure they learned their lesson quite horribly. And as you mentioned in the chat room, quite ironically, that they were hacked with such a visible level of hacking. As people mentioned, the hackers posted Edward Snowden's passport, the picture of his passport, to the internet after they hacked it out of the CEH website. So that obviously, now that's years, so many years ago that happened. So I've mentioned in the past, I haven't ruled it out 100%. You can never say never with these types of things. It's just I really like their content. So I go back and forth with this on whether I pursue maybe showing people some of that information or creating content around the Certified Ethical Hacker, or do we go a different direction with security? Or do we do security at all and we go a different direction with networking or databases or technology? So that's one of those situations. The security in the industry is constantly changing. We've seen most recently that there are people now taking advantage of the multi-factor authentication. So they are They are phishing you, sending you to a page, prompting you for the two-factor authentication so they can then get that and use it on the actual site. That's pretty strong. They are now really getting very good at this. So now we have to go the next step. So we're constantly changing this too. That's one that I think is always a moving target. We get in front of the bad guys get in front of us. It's a race, and we're constantly trying to update it. It will never end. It will never change. It will never slow down. We're going to constantly do this. But even if you don't get the Certified Ethical Hacker certification, the content that's in there is quite good. What they're teaching you and the things you would learn are the things we used all the time in the security world. In IT security world, I'm not talking about intrusion type of vulnerability scanning or actual penetration testing. That's a niche unto itself. I'm really just talking about the broad scope of IT security and being able to secure data, secure the environment as an IT security professional, which is probably the broadest use of security in IT that you'll find. There's not a lot of people numbers-wise doing penetration testing. That's the thing we often think of as a security job, but the vast majority of people doing security are in IT security. They're managing VPNs, next-generation firewalls, their two-factor authentication, their SIM systems, being able to make sure that they're auditing passwords, that everything is being stored encrypted. There's so many different ways that you can help your organization with security. And if you have somebody in a security group in IT, they're doing all those things and many, many more. Maybe somewhere in there is a little bit of vulnerability scanning and penetration testing as well. That's really the challenge, is keeping up with all of those things and making it happen. Well, we've made it through another live stream. The folks in the chat room say, when's the next live stream? And what certification is it for? You can always find out when the next one's going to be by going to professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll know. But this is, for those of you watching live, we're on a Tuesday. On Thursday, we do a 220-1002 A+ study group. So 2 days later, you can just stop back. We'll do another one of these where I'll ask you questions. You ask me questions. We'll go back and forth. Some of you got other questions coming in the chat room. We can even address those at that time as well. What should we do next? What should you do next as your next certification? We can talk about those things and so much more. Thank you for being here on this study group. I would not be able to have these without you. And it's so much fun too, to sit down, ask you questions, and then do another one as well. Always a lot of fun. Thanks for being here. We'll see you on Thursday for our 220-1002 study group. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on the A+ study group.